Hello, everyone. It is day 27, and we're almost done with this Fearless Challenge. It's amazing how it's still challenging every day to wake up and do another video, but I am loving it, and I am really excited that I've been sharing this journey with you and being brave and following through on my commitment and dedication to show up every day and share a little bit about myself. And in this process, I'm talking about some things that have occurred in the past, some things that are current, and also sprinkling in some of the most powerful teachings that I have come across and what I've learned along the way. So I hope you have enjoyed it. And I do welcome any messages, any questions, any feedback. I do appreciate you taking this journey with me and listening. It's been really powerful. So I'm going to continue on with a couple hot topics that I wanted to finish up with. I wanted to talk about body image and the way that we perceive ourselves and the way society has conditioned us or taught us how to see ourselves. I wanted to talk about sacred sexuality and different ways of relating in terms of how we're experiencing our body, how that relates to sexuality, how that relates to relationships. And then I want to get into, with the next couple videos, optimal aging and what does it mean to stay youthful and vital and young in a world that definitely has a slant towards a certain look or a certain lifestyle. So today, I'm mainly going to focus on my lifestyle, what it's been like for me, my body image issues that I have periodically gone through with the different phases of my life, because each phase of my life was a different issue or a different relationship to that. And going against the grain, as you've probably caught on, my life has been a little bit more alternative and even sometimes rebellious against societal standards. And that has been such an interesting journey to take, mainly because I had such an unusual upbringing and such an unusual life at such a young age that I never felt like I fit in or that the norm worked for me. I felt like such an outsider, or I felt so odd. So I was always trying alternative things to see, does this work for me? Is this how I can fit in? Is this really who I am and what my path is? So one of the things that was very out of the norm growing up in Philly, home of the cheesesteak, was being vegan. So I started my journey of veganism at age 13, and it really was quite a rebellion against all of the, we'll just say, processed foods and canned foods and TV dinners and things like that. I talked a little bit about this before, but I wanted to wrap it back around and talk about how intensely courageous that was, but also scary in an environment where I was made to be a weirdo for not wanting to eat processed foods and animals and dairy and things like that. It's much more accepted today, and I feel so grateful that on the West Coast and California and, a lot of places, even in the East Coast now, have really come a long way in terms of understanding nutrition and what does it mean to be healthy. So it's not so unusual, but at 13 in the 80s, being vegan in Philly, I was definitely ridiculed a lot and made fun of, and anything people don't understand, they tend to shun. So I'm really glad that I stuck to my conviction, because I really do feel like I'm a natural born yogi. I've always been attracted to those kind of alternative cultures. I've always been attracted to Buddhism and Hare Krishnas and just all of these unusual things for the inner city ghetto environment that I was in. But I really do value them and appreciate them. One of my favorite places to go when I was really young, a teenager, is I used to go down to South Street and go to this little restaurant called Govinda that was run by Hare Krishnas, and they were so fantastic. They had like the best vegan cookies. And at that time, I was a cookie monster and ate a lot of cookies. But no more. So I went through this straight edge phase, part of the punk rock era in Philadelphia, at least. There was an alternative movement that was actually even rebellious against punk rock, and they called themselves straight edge. And it was just a small sector of that too, where they were all about creating no harm and practicing that level of ahimsa. There was no drugs and no drinking and no sex and all of those things. And of course, being vegan. So it was really fascinating that I was in that straight edge philosophy and community for about 10 years of my second half of teenage into my 20s. Because growing up in the inner city, I was introduced to a lot of drinking and drugs at a very young age, and that didn't work for me at all. I was getting very sick as a child, and that just catapulted me into just some really poor health. So that was out of the question. I was allergic to alcohol for a very long time. I never even drank alcohol until I was in my 30s. And now I do drink and periodically mix in superfoods so that I can create healthy versions of cocktails. And I've made that a passion of mine over the last couple years to make healthy alternatives, what I call like supertinis and superfood cocktails. And it's been a really fun journey. But that was completely out of the question, just even thinking back to how clean I was and how adamant I was to not put anything like that in my body. It was really unusual. Most teenagers were out partying, and their focus was quite different than mine. Because I was living on my own and supporting myself, I was quite vigilant and serious about my education, and also putting myself through school and working 3 jobs and things like that. I couldn't go out partying all night and then get up and actually perform well. So that was my choice at a young age. And of course, I got into the rave scene when I was older, and that fit a lot more my personality, much more playful with like dress up and glitter and big baggy clothes and just playing with different characters. But I wanted to talk about my body image issues and what happened for me in this world where I had a standardized look of what was called American Beauty. Blonde hair, blue eyes. When I was younger, I developed when I was really young, and I had really big boobs. That was super embarrassing for me. But from a societal standpoint, I would get all of this, what I call negative attention based on how I looked. And then that just made me even more uncomfortable. So I spent most of my young adulthood completely rejecting myself, not loving myself, even to the point of self-loathing, which I had talked about in some previous videos. It was really tough, especially for someone who is really shy. I was constantly hiding my body and wearing like big baggy clothes. At one point, I had shaved my hair completely and wore glasses, especially when I was in college and grad school. I really was just rejecting any stereotypical association with what beauty was. And that led to eating disorders and all kinds of problems. But honestly, I've looked pretty much the same since I was 16. My weight and my overall, we'll just say, image has been very similar, but it has gone through different iterations and phases based on athleticism, based on what I was focusing on. I am incredibly strong and muscular. I've always been really athletic, but in the 80s and 90s, it was all about that waif look, and like super skinny, rail thin girls were kind of what the society considered to be beautiful. So it's always been some sort of challenge that I have had to face and overcome with just accepting myself. And most people get really annoyed when I talk about this, and they're like, oh, just shut up. You have it so easy. Well, it wasn't easy for me. And other people think, oh, if you're considered pretty and attractive in society, then you have it easier. but that was not my experience. Like, I feel like I get lots of extra attention, but that's not always positive attention. And it makes me incredibly uncomfortable when people judge me for the way I look instead of getting to know me as a person, that I actually have character. I am someone who is well developed in a lot of areas in my life, and I love being silly and funny and playful. And it's like, you can't be pretty, smart, and funny. You have to pick one. That's what I have found in society. People don't like that and don't dare be nice, because most people, when they would meet me, they would treat me a certain way, and I'm actually an incredibly kind person, and they're like, oh, I can't believe how nice you are. Like, hot chicks aren't usually that nice. And I'm like, oh my God, it's been such a trip to be associated in ways. I never really hung out with like cheerleaders in high school and things like that. I mean, I've always been somewhat popular, but never hung out with like the popular kids. I was always hanging out with the skaters and the punk rock kids and the nerdy kids. And so I have a lot of compassion for people, and I'm able to cross many genres without judging them for the way they look. And that is something that's going to continue to grow and change in our society. But it really wasn't until that awakening that I had when I was 24 that I vowed to love myself and to accept myself. Every day is still a challenge around body image and body issues and what society considers to be beautiful, and my own acceptance and grace around aging, because now that I'm turning 50, it's like such a different ball game. But like I said in previous videos, I do feel I'm the healthiest I've ever been. I do feel I'm at my best, not only because I still have physical vitality, but my maturity, my mental and emotional and spiritual development is also vital and strong and youthful. And so there's this thing we'll go into in another video called biological age versus chronological age. So my biological age is closer to 33 than it is to 50. It's basically how healthy of my systems, how healthy of the function of the body do I have. So I wanted to go into, what do I do to stay healthy? Well, for one, when I was younger, I always looked way older, and that's sort of turned around in my 30s, luckily. And at 36, through the theta healing practice, I activated my youth and vitality genes, and I specifically like to work with different chromosomes and different DNA activations in my quantum healing, so we can tap into this vital life force that runs the body. That's actually a thing. And you can see that more happening with the genetic therapies that are popping up, that there are ways to actually improve and extend the quality of our lives and the youthfulness of our being. So I take a ton of supplements, and I work with nootropics, minerals, amino acids, and enzymes, tons of superfoods. But it's not just what I put in my body, it's the way I treat myself, the way that I was talking about last time with radical self-care, and the kind of rest and nourishment that I give myself. And I do these activations and meditations every single day. One of the biggest hints that Source has given me around staying youthful and vital and alive is to keep learning and growing. Always try something new. So I get this message every single day that if I keep growing and expanding my neural pathways and challenging my body to experience new things, then it activates and awakens and revitalizes the cells. If the cells aren't being used, then they kind of get flat and deadened. It's when we continue to learn and grow and challenge ourselves, like I am doing in this 30-day experiment, then we're actually creating more youth and vitality for ourselves. So consider in what ways can you challenge yourself to continue learning and growing and trying new things and stretch yourself into areas in which you've always wanted to explore. Pick something you've always wanted to do and just go for it. Allow yourself to really experience that with the playfulness and the innocence of a child, but now that you have more of the mastery and the maturity of a wisdom keeper. So I'll see you again tomorrow. I'm really looking forward to talking about these other topics and finishing up with the last 3 of this 30-day challenge. Thank you so much for listening. Aloha.